Hi there. Continuing the series on combative concepts, in the previous episode we examined the vital pyramid, which was designed by Lofty, and we paid particular attention to the base of the pyramid, which is mindset, and we discussed the various hierarchical aspects of the mindset. And one of the things I want to do today is talk about how we can actually employ the mindset, how we can train with it and install it and use it when necessary. And the work on this was done by Colonel Jeff Cooper, who, with his vast experience working in hostile environments such as Guatemala, Rhodesia, and many other places, training many people, including presidential protection teams, he wanted to give the guys a method of being able to employ the mindset to the fullest. Because he realized that it is impossible to maintain the highest level of mental output, that which you use in a fight, the very intense level. You can't maintain that for any real length of time. But on the other hand, being switched off at the wrong time is likely to get you killed. So what he did was to come up with a gradient of levels, each one denoted by a colour, to separate out some different aspects of your mental posture at any particular time. And we call this the Cooper color code, and it starts at the lowest level, which is called condition white. Condition white denotes unready. You don't expect the possibility of an attack, so you should only be in a safe place where your security is guaranteed, where if anything happens, you're in a protected space and you have plenty of time to prepare to react. And this is where you can switch off. And the thing is, we need our white time. We need to be able to decompress, recharge the batteries and so on. So white is only for that situation of total safety or security. The next level is condition yellow. And condition yellow is whenever we have left the safe environment. Yellow denotes relaxed alertness. You have accepted the possibility of threat and you are aware of your surroundings, people, traffic, lighting conditions, weather, and so on. And obviously this varies on your location, whether it's urban, rural, or whatever. A phrase that I use is, we pay attention to buy time. Time equals distance equals options. We pay attention to buy time. Being in yellow, obviously we don't walk with headphones on, looking at our phone, texting, oblivious to whatever's going on around us. We are alert, We have an easy, unobtrusive scan of the environment. We are aware of what's behind us, what's above us, what's in front of us, and we scan the near and we scan the far. So this is, as I say, it's relaxed alertness, but it is alertness. Now, some people portray this as paranoia, and it's the opposite. As Masayub says, if you're looking for thorns, you get to see the roses. You actually are more, you're communicating more, you're more involved with what's going on around you, whether you're outdoors or indoors, everywhere. You're seeing people's body language, you're people watching. That's all part of being in yellow, and it does enrich your life. And rather than relying on electronic stimulation, you're getting the real true social interaction. Now, there is a level of yellow which we identified many years ago as being relevant to, for example, high profile VIP protection, where the team members are paying attention, obviously, but it's in a more active mode. They are scanning their environment, and it's analogous to sonar on a submarine, where it can have a passive mode where it just listens, but it can have an active mode where it's putting out pings to look for threats. And this is kind of like that. You're pinging things, you're looking more actively, and it's a bit more obvious what you're doing, but it is appropriate to that task. You know, in that, for example, the US Secret Service, everyone knows who they are, the ones who are immediately around the president, for example. I talked to the colonel about this, and he had already taken this into account. He called it a hot yellow. So I when training the guys, I call it yellow alpha. Okay, so it's you've just turned up the heat a little bit. So that's yellow alpha. On the other hand, we also identified a situation where it's the opposite. You don't want to look alert. You don't want to be seen as somebody who is scanning the environment. And this is, for example, people who are engaged on surveillance operations in hostile territory, where the whole idea is to be unobtrusive and have high third-party awareness. An example would be if a surveillance operator had to enter a pub in a dodgy area to look for a target. The last thing he or she would do would be to go in heads on swivel, you know, and pinging everyone in there. They would try to blend in the body language, the demeanor, try to be totally congruent with the people in the pub, and the observation would be carried out with fast glances, unobtrusive eye movements, using reflective surfaces and so on. And we might call that level condition grey, for example. The next level is condition orange, and in condition orange you have picked up something while you're in yellow, some behavior, something's not quite right. The adage the military use is the absence of the expected, the presence of the unexpected, that kind of thing. And it means that you will focus in on this until it's resolved one way or the other. So it requires a knowledge of patterns of encounter, combat indicators, and they vary depending on the location. So if you're traveling, you have to update your knowledge of these things to how criminals operate in those areas. Also, what natural disasters could befall you. The yellow to orange switch that the kernel introduced in this is a really elegant solution. It really does make the color code completely viable, because it separates out yellow, which is a condition that you can be in for extended periods. In fact, you can live in condition yellow. And Marcus actually wrote an article called that, Living in Condition Yellow. Whereas orange and the higher levels require much more concentration, much more mental effort, and take up more bandwidth. So they should be used only when necessary. And the shift from yellow to orange does that. So orange, we have identified a potential threat. So the next level, the highest level, is red, condition red, which denotes a fight. And in the original gunsight doctrine, it would be a lethal encounter requiring defensive gunfire. But the colour code does apply to all forms of personal self-protection, whether armed or unarmed. In red, the situation has gone really bad. From orange, we haven't been able to, or circumstances have dictated the fact that it's escalated into a fight. We haven't been able to avoid it, however much we would want to. And what then happens, what the Colonel came up with, another one of his elegant ideas, is we set the mental trigger. So in red, we set the mental trigger. And what this does is it cuts down on the decision-making process, which is probably the most difficult part of the whole thing. Should I, shouldn't I, am I allowed to, whatever. You make the decisions in advance. And the trigger could be the sight of a weapon, or it could be the weapon in the hand, or it could be distance if the assailant crosses a particular line. It could be the uniform of an enemy. There's many things it can be, and it all depends on your rules of engagement and your particular area, the laws of the land and so on. It's got to be legal, but once you've set the parameters in advance for that mental trigger, then everything else that follows is automatic, and it doesn't require any further decisions. I use the analogy of a warship to kind of get across the whole idea of the colour code. So if you can imagine a warship in its home port, refitting, most of the crew are on leave, there's lots of levels of security around it, all sorts of defences, the radars are switched off. That's analogous to condition white. A warship at sea, the radars are scanning the surface, subsurface, and the air above the sea to look for threats, or what they call bogeys. This is condition yellow. If a bogey is detected, something that maybe shouldn't be there, or they're not sure of, it hasn't got its identification, friend or foe, then what they would do is take one of the radars, and it goes from general sweep to localized sweep. It focuses in on that bogey. while the other radars maintain still the all-round 360 above and below scan. And this is then watched carefully. If the bogey is identified as being enemy, being a threat, then the trigger is set, and again rules of engagement apply. These change depending on many factors, but it could be the sight of the enemy readying weapons. It could be the enemy passing a line, having been warned, do not come any closer, for example. And then the ship's own defensive weapons have been slaved to the radars, they're locked onto the threat, and they launch torpedoes, missiles, rapid firing guns, whatever. So white, yellow, orange and red. So that's kind of the analogy we use. Some final thoughts. Many organizations and instructors have modified and adapted the color code to their own use, and that's fine. Slacky, our good friend, wrote a very well thought out article on the forum a few years ago, and he goes into the color code very, very deeply, and in it he says that it was designed by the colonel as a gearbox to lethal intent, and I think that sums it up rather well. And in its original form, as I've described it, that is what it is. It's not just to do with alertness, it's to do with preparation to fight, preparation to employ weapons, preparation to use force. Training methods for the color code. The first one the colonel suggested is to have a game where you keep a chart of X's and O's, and whenever you see a friend or acquaintance or colleague before they see you, that is an O, and whenever someone sees you first and shouts your name and you look around in surprise, that's an X. And the whole idea is over the period of time to have more O's than X's. So that's a really good method. Then another method is the Venerable Kim's game from the famous book and also movie by Kipling, and it was where the young Kim, who is going to be a spy, is trained in observation methods, and these we find we were introduced to them by Lofty, and it's a very, very good way of keeping mental acuity and powers of observation. We also used to do observation lanes where you had to walk and identify things as well. But Kim's game is very easy to do, and you can do it just with a friend and test each other. Another method we used with the bodyguards is commentary walk, and this came from the driver training method of commentary driving, whereas as you drive, you out loud, you verbalize what you're seeing, what the traffic is doing, what the traffic conditions are, the road conditions, what's in the mirrors and so on, constantly. We adapted it and use it on foot, and what we do is send guys out in pairs through an area, could be a train station, a shopping mall, whatever, and one partner is verbalizing what he's seeing, particularly things of tactical significance, while after 5 minutes or so the other guy takes over and they change roles. And then you can step it up where one partner's doing the observation, doing the verbalization, and the other guy can ask questions about something that they've passed or saw or description of someone or whatever. After you've been doing that for a while, it kind of a switch in the brain is activated and it becomes part of you. You actually have stepped up in awareness considerably. Colonel Cooper left a lasting legacy of many things. Most noted was the laboratory he set up for the development of personal pistol training, which has influenced most military, civilian and law enforcement training organizations throughout the Western world. Even if they're not using strictly gun sight methods, the framework for further adaptation and development was set by the Colonel. And in my opinion, the colour code is another really exceptional part of his legacy, which he's passed on. And it has allowed many people in various parts of the world to prevail in violent confrontations, but it's allowed even more than that to avoid violent confrontations, and that is a terrific legacy.